Welcome to Module 8, Session A of the Smooth MOOC on Universal Design, Accessibility Planning and Social Inclusion. My name is Dr. Megha Tyagi. I'm a Principal Transport Planner at Cities Forum, and today we will explore the key concepts of Children's Independent Mobility or CIM. This session has been developed under the Global Center of Spatial Methods for Urban Sustainability, funded by the German Academic Exchange Service or DAAD. These modules have been curated under the aegis of the Laboratory of Inclusive Design or LID at IIT Roorkee. After this session, you will be able to recognize the importance of designing mobility environments through a child-centered perspective, develop a foundational understanding of CIM in urban planning, and explore the theoretical links or connections between neighborhood planning and children's independent mobility. So let's start with Session A of Module 8. Section 1, Understanding the Mobility Environments through a Child-Centered Perspective. When thinking about a child's daily mobility, the first journey that comes to mind is often between home and school. With 1.8 billion children globally commuting to school every day, it's the most common route. However, children also travel to other local destinations such as playgrounds, markets, or hobby classes, structured classes maybe, or a friend's house. These destinations are typically connected by what we call the local streets, forming the core of the neighborhood landscape. However, unfortunately, children's ability to navigate these spaces is increasingly constrained by various factors. Let's understand about these factors a little more in detail. These factors include rising traffic and pollution, urban sprawl, and social fears like stranger danger or traffic-related injuries, which challenge children's autonomous mobility profoundly. These factors have led to isolation and intolerance, significantly affecting children's ability to move freely in their environment. But the question is, how we landed in this situation? Let's rewind a little. Since the very beginning, cities have evolved significantly, especially after the industrialization in the global north and the rise of motorized traffic, particularly the car. The image on the left shows a busy London street in the mid-1960s, dominated by motorized traffic. This was the result of the focus of urban planners and transport engineers of that time to cater primarily to the needs of an adult male car user moving around the city for work. Car was marketed as a symbol of economic progress, a reliable and a necessary investment for a growing family. In fact, with the rise in car ownership, the long tradition of children playing on the streets or shared spaces suffered an irreplaceable loss. So much so that families with children were compelled to shift to suburban areas, while young adults without children occupied the core city areas. This shift deeply impacted children's connection to urban life. In the 1970s, this problem started to get attention, with parents and child rights advocates taking the center stage. The Dutch started this movement called Stop the Child Murder Protest in 1970s, demanding city authorities to bring reforms for reducing traffic-related fatalities, especially for children and young adults. Gradually, the deterioration of children's neighborhood interaction Gradually, the deterioration of children's neighborhood interaction resulted in an increased focus on multidisciplinary researchers to investigate the urban childhood landscape. The turning point came with a landmark study funded by UNESCO and led by the noted American planner and author Kevin Lynch called Growing Up in Cities. This project found that children uses urban spaces differently than adults. With this background, the United Nations launched the Convention on the Rights of the Child or UNCRC Act in 1989, which was the first internationally binding instrument giving fundamental rights to all children. In fact, it also acted as a catalyst to change society's perception of children from invisible, vulnerable to active citizens. During this time, the popular perspective on city life was very much dominated by Ebenezer Howard's Garden City theory, where he idealized a self-sustaining, small, and independent neighborhood units with segregated spaces, completely disregarding the organic and complex social fabric of the modern cities of that time. Reflecting on this popular concept, works of several prominent researchers such as noted Swiss psychologist Ian Piaget, American-Canadian journalist and activist Jane Jacob, British anarchist, writer and editor Colin Ward, to child rights academic Roger Hart was highlighting that children experience and interact with cities differently than adults, challenging the existing urban planning narratives. With this background, we come to the era of 1990s. London-based researchers Hillman, Adams, and Whiteleg in their groundbreaking study titled One False Move found that only 9% of British children aged 7 to 8 years were allowed to go to school without an adult companionship, a sharp drop from 80% in 1971. This sparked similar studies globally, all showing a sharp decline in children's independent mobility, which has fueled today's discussion on the topic. But what exactly is children's independent mobility? Let's explore that in the next section. Section 2, Children's Independent Mobility, the concept. Children's independent mobility is defined as the right of a child to walk, cycle, or use public transport to reach their local destination, like a school or a friend's house, without an accompanying adult. If the mode of transport used by a child is walking or cycling, it is considered active mobility, while other modes largely come under the category of public transport or intermediate public transport. Today, we have data that shows how this ability of children to move independently is declining over generations. Let's understand why. The broad factors could be categorized under 5 broad themes. 1. Growing car dependency. 2. Social factors such as increasing incomes, changing employment patterns, etc. 3. Rapid urbanization, increasing distances between urban-based activities. 4. Changing concept of risk. And 5. Evolving unsupportive policies of school transport and school choices. Together, they all are contributing to the worldwide decline in children's independent mobility. But we wonder, why does an adult-free movement of children matter? Let's understand in the next slide. Studies suggest that children's independent mobility is a vital sign of a healthy neighborhood. Research also shows that children's independent mobility is crucial for their overall development. It, in, it actually encourages physical activity, builds resilience, and enhances spatial awareness. Furthermore, CIM allows children to develop social skills by interacting with peers in unstructured environments. It's also associated with better mental well-being. High levels of children's ability to travel freely without adult supervision suggest a safe and accessible environment conducive to child-friendly urban development. This concept is supported by various international initiatives such as UNICEF's Child-Friendly Cities and Communities, Sustainable Development Goal number 11, and the New Urban Agenda. These initiatives emphasize the importance of creating cities that prioritize the needs of children and promote their well-being. To dig deeper into this relationship, let's understand the two key theoretical concepts in the next section. Section 3. Theoretical relationship between neighborhood planning and CIM. One of the most cited and popular conceptual framework is Bullerbee model, based on the work of Finnish academician Professor Marketa Kita. This model established a theoretical foundation for creating a child-friendly urban setting as the relationship between the availability of things to do to the level of independent mobility a child has to explore and enjoy the same. In contrast, or in opposite direction, if an urban setting do not provide these opportunities, it is compared to a cell. To convert an urban setting with the characteristics of a cell to a child-friendly city, researchers acknowledged that there is a need to understand the multiple and complex factors behind it. This led to the evolution of one of the recent models called the system model, developed in 2015 by Badland and colleagues to visualize the complexity of children's independent mobility. They tried to understand the causal relationship between the different influential factors, as you can see here in this diagram. They argue that instead of linear relationship as conceptualized earlier, it is the interdependencies and mediating and moderating effects among the factors that affect children's independent mobility outcomes the most. I would highly recommend to read more about this concept through their paper. So this ends Module 8, Session A. Next, we will explore the application of CIM as a tool in urban planning. Stay tuned for Session B, where we will delve deeper into practical strategies for fostering children's independent mobility in our cities. Thank you for your attention. I hope this session has provided valuable insights into children's independent mobility. See you in the next session.